But Mikael, who are you? I mean, like we known each other since several years back, so that's why I'm so
2009 actually.
2009. I was going to ask you that. When did we meet the first time? I was at
ProSales.
ProSales. You were the mad scientist.
Yeah.
Bringing a scientific method into
sales.
Into sales. The guys who is the least scientific. Maybe that was an interesting one.
Yeah, but I think it's I'm still a bit of a shell shock.
Yeah, but it was so much fun. But then again, so who is Mikael? I think you're a role-playing guy. You're a philosopher to be,
philosopher of science.
Philosopher of science, futurologist in your CV at least.
Comparative linguistics.
Comparative linguistics. So. Can you tell how did that start up? And just to make it even worse or even better, it depends on how we will look at it. Me and Mikael is both from Sjuhäradsbygden. So me and Mikael can
represent.
We can talk about the West Coast Västgötapojkarna, the guys out in the woods on the west side of Sweden. So tell me your story a little bit.
All right. I'll start. Recently. I am a sociologist. Specifically, I deal with organizational sociology, and even more specifically, computational organizational sociology. And then I've been, that was my PhD. I was finished in 2009, and then I started sort of applying my modeling skills. First at ProSales with sales, which was a lot of fun. And then Henrik took me to Vattenfall, where I've been a senior data scientist since 2013. Yeah, about it. And I've been doing mostly quantitative modeling, multivariate statistical analysis. So old school analysis.
Yeah. I think we're going to have some real cool topics to talk about. I mean, like just to name a few, we need to talk about how your role-playing faiblesse and how you have taken that into also understanding data science. That we will have a lot of fun with that. We need to talk about, what is a beautiful language when you're a data scientist? Why do we like our Perl or our Julia?
Funny thing here is that I started out with comparative linguistics. So I've studied Latin, Greek, Sanskrit, Hittite, ancient Swedish, ancient English, Old English, Gothic,
cool.
And various dead languages. And I mean...
No Klingon?
It's not a dead language.
So how to take the linguistic mindset into data languages? What did you think about? Have you made any...
Yeah, actually, I mean... I have an analytical bent, to put it mildly. So, of course, I've been trying to sort of rationalize my journey from Latin to Julia.
That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, learning languages is rather sort of, picture this, you're trying to translate a text in a language you don't know. Your only tools is a book of grammar of the language and what's it called? Dictionary. And it's up to you to decode the text using these tools. And here comes the thing that's actually informed my thinking ever since, is that you always keep in mind that the author of the text has something to convey. It has a message. He means something. There is sort of a truth to the text. There's something going on there that you can actually try to decode.
Some semantic of some kind, or what?
No, actually, it's sort of the interpretation of the message mainly. So, what's he trying to say?
So why was he passionate enough to put something on paper and words?
Yeah, but I mean, it's a human writing something. It's just another language, which means that I, as another human, speaking another language, if I want to say the same thing, I'd use my language. So, which means that there is some sort of story I can follow. I just have to sort of build a model of that using grammar and dictionary. And that is sort of the birth of my sort of analytical mindset.
And this now, could you sort of could you follow the logic from Latin to Julia in this way?
It's a bit of a roundabout way, but yeah. So I started with linguistics, and then I got into sort of ethnography, ethnology, and sort of study of ancient cultures. And then I got into sort of pure social structures like sociology, where I stayed. And I got interested in sort of organizations. I mean, how the fuck do organizations work? Because mostly they don't.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. You're in sociology and in these type of sciences, and all of a sudden now you're applying this, or your mind is taking you into classical, business organizational theory.
Yeah. And actually that was when I started my postgraduate studies, my PhD. The thing I wanted to do, I wanted to sort of experiment on organizations and see if I tweak this, what happens. Of course, no organization will allow me to do that. Because they want to survive.
In real life.
Yeah, exactly. So I realized quickly that, okay, I have to simulate these organizations. So, and then I had to learn to program. And that was Java.
Yeah.
Was
Was Java your first language?
Actually, yeah. And I taught it myself. And
what was your PhD in essence? Because I think there is a connection to what you have been studying in your PhD to what we need to do to succeed with data and AI. So I really want to explore.
Yeah, definitely. So let's open that box. My PhD is all about the conflict between. So first of all, it's about organizations. And the conflict between adaptability and efficiency. Basically, how much do you invest into making mistakes for the future?
Yes.
That's the adaptability part.
Yeah, that's the adaptability part, because you have to make mistakes in order to have a preparedness for or a contingency plan. In cybernetics, it's called the law of requisite variation. You need to have a repertoire of responses as diverse as the environment you live in. Most organizations, or at least commercial enterprises, tend to stagnate and sort of ossify, solidify, become fossils, living fossils. And this was actually noted by Arthur Stinchcombe, which is sort of in a book from 1965, when he just cynically, most of his risk can be summed up in most organizations once established do not change.
So you think that the adaptability, or is it fair to call it innovation or like R&D kind of operation, or is there a difference between?
Yeah, that's an application of it.
So would you say that there is a strong correlation between the size of a company and the level of adaptability?
Not necessarily. But bigger companies tend to develop rather monolithic bureaucracies, and that puts a dampener on things.
But because the way I have to some degree understood this, when we have talked about this in the past, is a little bit like you're on this maturity curve. So you're an innovator, you start building a business, and then you start becoming successful at something.
Yeah.
And then when you start becoming successful at something, your production grows, and you start chasing efficiencies.
Yeah, you tend to capitalize on your cash cow.
Yeah, you capitalize on your cash cow, and you basically make the company more and more efficient towards that one thing, cash cow, whatever you're doing. And this is now the adaptability goes down, the heterogeneity goes down. Yeah. So you become more and more homogeneous as an industry, as an organization. And ultimately, when you're now entering into some sort of paradigm shift, or basically now if we talk about data and AI, we have our old legacy domain organizations who has been chasing efficiency and homogeneity for a process that has been looking in one way. They don't have the adaptability, they don't have the heterogeneity in terms of other skills needed in order to adopt or reinvent the core business.
Exactly.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yeah, it goes back to Apple's commercial of 1984. Think different. Was that 1984? Or was it later? The Think Different campaign.
The Think Different was later. 1984 was the first. That was the running. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah, that was a stab at the IBM. Yeah.
1984 was the equivalent with the Orwell.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was a stab at IBM.
Yeah, Think Different was later.
Think Different was later.
Yeah, and that is sort of summarizes the law of requisite variety. Is that you need to have a reservoir of different thoughts within your company, because if you don't have any way to respond to a change in your environment or your market.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Essentially, yes. But and in some ways, I think this is the hardcore truth about the challenges with adopting data and AI. Because now we have a specific example of where we need to change and adapt to new types of tools or competencies. And of course, then it's not going to happen until you put that into the repertoire next to your hammer. And then, of course, did you have any? I mean, like going back to your PhD now, did you? Is there an optimum balance here between homogeneity, how to think? Because I can understand also if you take it too far, you have anarchy, right? If you have only adaptability,
and you don't have positive cash flow.
You don't have, you have an experimentation. Or you have an experimental organization, but you don't have real production or efficiency in production.
And you make too many mistakes.
Too many mistakes. So what was the outcome? Could you sort of simulate this in some ways, or what was the core idea?
Yeah, the problem is that these were simulated organizations, so I have no way of sort of taking that back to the real world, because that would entail doing decades of studies on actual organizations and sort of trying to gauge their adaptability coefficient or something like that. And I never did that.
You never did that. No, that's cool.
But anyway, it's fairly easy. The Stinchcom's observation from 1965 that organizations once established tend not to change is still true.
And do you think do you think the underlying root cause is what we are talking about here, this mechanism?
Yeah, definitely, because most companies are defensive or become defensive once they've been successfully established. They want to keep doing what they're good at, and they want to basically it's like a dopamine system.
Yeah,
they get locked into their own some dopamine loop.
Yeah,
this process brought us to success, and we'll keep doing it because we like it.
I guess you've heard about the Kodak experience.
The Kodak moment.
Yeah. Moment.
Classic.
And, yeah, exactly. I guess you can probably describe it better than I can, but they were the biggest camera manufacturer in the world, and they focused on analog cameras, and they actually apparently heard that they had some person in Kodak that invented a digital camera back in the 1980s or something, and they tried to explain the motivations for how this could be an improved user experience, but it basically got shut down because they had this kind of weird KPIs of the better resolution, the better user experience, and that was the only thing they did. So they completely stopped working with that. How would you describe the Kodak moment, or the problems that they had? And that basically, went in bankruptcy in 1 year or something, 2008, if I remember correctly.
But it becomes